There's a little garage on a small town street. I like to meet my friends there every week, and I know we'll talk about some facts and things, history and science and some crazy shit. Talking it out with Alan, Ben, and Nick, and I know that it's gonna be a weird-ass show. Ooh, insanity abounds. Ooh, the world is spinning round. Now we're gonna break it down. Tuning in. We are Informed and Confused. I'm Ben.
I'm Alan.
And I'm Nick. Thanks for joining us this week. We like to have fun here, but oftentimes we can get lost in the details of an expansive story, and we forget that we're just kind of three guys in a garage. Like, not even terribly well educated guys. Like, we all went to college, but we didn't finish nothing. Like,
Yeah.
So just remember that today as we're talking, we don't mean to offend anyone. We're not trying to attack anything or anyone's values. We're just three guys in a garage, and this is our thoughts on the matter.
We are not an accredited source.
Yeah, we get stuff wrong occasionally. It happens. We try our best, but...
We are both informed and confused.
Yeah, we do not have a giant research staff sitting somewhere off camera.
No,
it's
so
whatever
it's
these
just
two
us.
do on the internet the week prior.
Oh, you don't want to know what I did on the internet the week prior.
No one wants to know that.
I'm pretty sure I wish I didn't know. So that said, Mormons?
Yeah,
Yes.
today we're going to be talking about the overall Mormon church, which... previous to 2019 was known as the Church of the Latter-day Saints. I don't know.
2018. It's something. It's something Church of Christ. It's still equally wordy, and like they still don't have a good solution for. You're not even supposed to call them Mormons anymore. We're calling them Mormons. We're not complicating this.
Yeah.
For the sake of simplicity, we are merely referring to them as Mormons.
Yeah. See, first line of conversation, vagary already.
I'm not trying to offend you, but you're a fucking Mormon. It's not my fault. This is like a drill instructor in 1942 in the U.S. Just like, Diego, what kind of guinea wop ass name is that? I was born in Georgia. Changes nothing.
Okay then.
There's our racial slurs for the day.
Yeah.
Dude, we're going back to the 1800s. We have not even begun to slur.
Yeah.
Am I the only one who's not just disgusted by our history? Is like, yeah, we're awful.
No, it's just
disappointed.
we immediately we try to make a point about not wanting to offend anybody and being considerate, and then immediately
I don't
you
want
utter
to offend
slurs,
them.
and then immediately talk about how we're just gonna be all over them slurs today.
I don't want to offend them. If they get offended, that's their thing. Like I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep going now, but
all right.
So Mormons.
Mormonism.
Most people, if they know Mormons, know about it mostly through things like South Park and other media things like that make lighthearted joke of it.
Or there's a soup kitchen in their neighborhood.
We're gonna go a little more
Detail.
seriously in depth.
Yeah, kind of.
We're mostly talking history here. Without getting into like the divisive points of Mormons and their history, they've been around a while and they've been fairly important to the U.S.
Just the facts. We want the facts today. Just the facts on Mormonism, not the crazy speculation or weird theories or conspiracy.
Wait,
we'll do that.
So we're not going to talk about Joseph Smith running through the woods in upstate New York, full speed, carrying 200 pounds of gold tucked under his arm for 3 miles. We're not going to talk about that.
I think we just did.
Yeah.
I love the math on the fucking weight of the Book of Mormon. You have no idea how much it fills my heart with joy when people who, like, know shit were like, solid gold book, huh?
Yeah, that would be one heavy-ass book.
Dude, Joseph Smith put the final nail in his coffin. He gave him dimensions on that shit.
And we're back.
All right. So Mormonism. What is Mormonism? It's the first question we need to ask. That is a question in itself that I think a lot of people don't have all the facts on. When we normally think of Mormonism, we generally think of one of two things: the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as it was known until 2018.
Yeah, they changed it.
The mainline Mormon Church, or if you're talking about the shadier side of things, you're talking about the Fundamentalist Church, which we were not going to talk about today.
Yeah, no,
we're talking about.
They're not the same people.
We're going to do a different episode on the FDS.
Yeah, no, those are the ones with, like, child brides, arranged marriages, a thing called incest downs. Oh, that is going to be a fun episode.
Yeah, these are not the people we're talking about. These are just regular people.
From Utah, mostly.
Yeah, mostly from Utah, Idaho, surrounding areas.
Utah is definitely where a lot of the Mormon base is these days, but there's Mormons across the entire U.S.
The Mormons across the world.
I was about to say, I take that back, because I believe their highest population is actually in Ohio in the U.S.
I don't think so.
Ohio might just have a big enough population vis-a-vis Utah that even if it's only a percentage, it's still more than Utah.
Raw numbers, like per capita,
Utah.
I'm sure
Definitely Utah.
Yeah, Utah is the Mormon capital of the world.
Well, it's like Dearborn, largest concentration of Middle Eastern people outside the Middle East.
Yeah. Anyways, so Mormonism, more broadly, we're talking about the Latter-day Saints movement, which covers basically all of these different churches, because it's not just those two. There are a number of others.
Like most religions, it's splintered into dozens of subgroups.
What we would call Mormon denominations.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah, that's a good term for it.
Smith kind of primed it so that when he ended up going down, that it would end up fractioning. He had, a council of 12 different advisors?
It's more complex than that. He had a named successor, but unfortunately that was his brother who died at the same time he did.
Yeah.
So they kind of had a succession
crisis.
crisis.
Before him, according to witness accounts.
We'll get there. But basically the Latter-day Saints movement is a movement that started basically in the 1830s. It's a restorationist movement, which there were a number of these at that time in America. That basically a restorationist movement in vis-a-vis Christianity is a movement that intends to rediscover the true teachings or true meaning of a belief system. So these are people who are thinking Christianity's gotten it wrong over the course of the 2,000 years or 1,800 years at this point, and we're rediscovering the true intent, the true way of doing things.
You're freshening it up. You're trying to get it hip with the kids again. Jesus is a skateboarder now. Kids will love it.
Kind of like the thing when some kids will start when they don't like their parents' shit, but they'll start going get retro and like the stuff their grandparents were into.
So
I want to see some 14-year-old goth punk kid who goes home to listen to his Victrola.
So you're basically saying they're theological hipsters.
Kind of, sort of. You're not entirely wrong.
That is actually a fairly apt analogy.
Their religion was born by peering into the depths of an awful style of hat. I mean, there is some hipster DNA in that action.
They were hipsters before hipsters became cool.
Yeah, the other analogy,
the ultimate hipster move.
The other analogy I was going to use was the rebirth or the rediscovery of records. People using record players. It's kind of a thing.
The sad thing is, digital technology has gotten to the point that is better than any analog medium. but they've done enough studies to prove that the shittiness of analog is actually what our brains prefer because it tricks us into thinking it's live.
Well, and as with, like, our new enhanced TV screens and stuff, we're starting to get to the point where our meat bodies can no longer tell the difference.
Yeah, no, high enough end TV, your eyes don't see those pixels.
Yeah.
Right.
They're too tiny.
Like we said, the main Mormon church, the one we're going to focus on here, is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which currently, to give you kind of an idea of the scope, has 16 million members worldwide, approximately. Of those, only 6.5 are actually in the United States. They're actually more Mormons outside the U.S.
There's roughly 10 million Mormons not living in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
Part of the thing you also have to remember, the Mormons are real big on proselytizing. They love sending out missionaries. That is a big part of their doctrine.
Yeah, that's actually a thing. Once you hit, I want to say it's 17 or 18, every Mormon has to go and do at least 1 year's worth of missionary work. It's a fundamental part of
We're going to send you to Jacksonville, Florida, where you're going to ride a bicycle and distribute literature in a suit in June.
Yep.
Have fun.
Actually, a couple of the Mormons that I knew when I was living in Utah did their missionary work in South Africa.
Well, they do stuff domestically too. Like it doesn't matter where you spread the word. Their goal is just spread the word.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No. The second largest group, just for additional reference, it just calls itself the Church of Christ, formerly known as the Reorganized Church of Latter-day Saints. Has about 250,000 members worldwide.
Okay.
And then they get smaller from there.
As they fracture further, right.
Yeah. The one thing they all generally, the core thing they all have in common is the Book of Mormon.
Which traces itself back to Joseph
Smith. Right.
Who is kind of a...
he is the founder of the entire...
key player of Mormonism.
Yep. And Joseph Smith was born on December 23rd, 1805, in Sharon, Vermont.
Right before Christmas.
Yeah.
Got shortchanged on gifts every fucking year.
Yeah. Raised by a family of farmers. Grew up on a farm.
I feel like statistically more people were raised on farms back then.
Yes.
Well,
drastically more. But like 80% of the population in this country was was rural.
Like I think it'd be way more notable if you're like, his dad was an accountant. No shit, his town had one of those?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a pre-industrial society. Well, not pre-industrial,
1800s.
but I mean,
an industrializing society.
One that was going through the motions of becoming
Industrial Revolution.
Steampunk is still futuristic for like another 6 years.
In 1817, they moved to Western New York, where he grows up. Basically, spends the rest of his time growing up. Now, for a lot of this, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give the narrative as he puts forward and as the church actually puts forward what actually happens.
This is what the church claims has happened.
For simplicity of conversation, I'm just going to read this as a historical narrative. Obviously, I'm not saying this is scientifically proven events. You can argue whether or not this is actually true or not. That's a whole nother debate we're not going to get into. But for simplicity of the conversation, I'm just going to read it that way. Rather than saying supposedly, he claimed every other sentence.
Gotcha. So I will begin biting my tongue now.
Okay.
Oh, I'm just waiting until the end because I already know how to shit on the whole thing.
Most of this, I believe he actually started writing down about saying that this happened to him in the 1830s, in the late 1830s, when he was writing the Book of Mormon. Right. So, 1820, he has his first vision, which is of both God the Father and Jesus. Who basically just tell him in this first one that mankind or Christianity has strayed from its original path and needs to be brought back around to the way it's actually supposed to be.
You're our new Messiah.
His mother really pounded into him this idea of people of tremendous faith would be given visions from God and could communicate divine prophecy.
Yeah.
So he believed from a young age that, oh, everybody can do this. You just have to believe hard enough. And with that mentality, it's not hard to see how you end up where you do.
Yeah.
This is basically all that happens until 1823, when he gets the vision of the angel Moroni. Moroni is how you pronounce it.
Yep.
Who shows him where a series of golden plates, where
if I may, just so we don't get too far off of it, because I don't think there'll be a good chance for this. Do you know where the Book of Mormon actually comes from? The name.
I looked that up. I had it in there.
Mormon is the writer of the book. The book is supposed to be Mormon's diary.
Okay.
Moroni is supposed to be Mormon's son, which is why you're supposed to treat this as credible. You're getting the words of the father from the son.
Okay.
Take the similar naming from like the Book of Peter, the Book of Mark, the Book of
Right.
Mormon.
I didn't
Mormon
see a good
was the
time to bring
name
up the
of
relationship
the
between
prophet
Mormon and
or
Moroni
whatever.
again.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
Right. No. So yeah, he shows him where a location in upstate New York where there's these golden plates buried here that are the writings of the Lephites, I believe is the term.
it details the war between the Lephites and the Nephites.
Yeah, the Lephites and the Nephites.
Mormon was a Nephite.
Right. And that were buried there thousands of years ago and contain the true teachings or whatever. But he doesn't let them actually dig them up yet. He tells them they're there, but you gotta wait. He has to wait 4 years. And eventually
which is just about enough time for him to come up with everything that he says was on them.
No, he was polishing his seer stone.
well, yeah.
You know, the seer stone that he found in a well when he was 8 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah, so while those plates are sitting there, from 1823 to 1827, his family comes on
This
hard
is
times.
hard.
It is. Keep
I
going.
don't know why. I'm perfectly capable of doing it.
That's because you're an adult.
No, this isn't hard for you. This is hard for us.
Yeah, no, we're children. That's why.
Wow.
I'm being nice right now.
Will it help any if I threaten to take away your allowance money and send you to bed without supper?
We both know I know where the guns and ammo are. This is a fool's bet. I'm willing to take this to end game, old man.
So the Lephites and the Nephites. We've thrown those names out there a couple of times. For those of you out there who don't know what we're talking about, the Lephites and the Nephites were lost tribes of Israel.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which somehow came over here. I believe their tale is that they came over the land bridge from Russia, and that's how they ended up here.
I'm not sure what the nonsense explanation is. I
don't
never
believe
bothered to justify that end of
I don't believe the existence of the Bering land bridge was known in Joseph Smith's time.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
There's a lot of issues like that with the archaeological record where, like, when he starts talking early on that don't add up, but
but anyways,
later church has gone back and added explanations to explain the holes in logic that he didn't have.
But so anyways, they arrive in the Americas and eventually become the Native Americans, and that's who left the.
Well, it kind of needs to be said. The Book of Mormon details a war between the Lephites and the Nephites. The Lephites ended up killing the Nephites in what originally was described as a genocide. Now it's more described as just sort of a generic war.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the Lephites became the Native Americans. What distinguished them at the time, the explanation was God punished them by dyeing their skin red to match the blood of their brothers.
Their skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blatantly messed up. You can see how it would play into certain lines of thinking from the time where it's like, oh, yes, no, they are savages. Oh, no, we are just reclaiming land that they took from us, their white brothers. We're just rectifying things. It's that manifest destiny shit rearing its ugly head in all kinds of places. It just product of times.
A lot of it was just a way to explain away the prejudices that were already held.
The modern church works really hard to move away from it, but it is very hard to when it is literally the inciting incident of your founding document.
Yeah. Anyways, so for about 4 years, while his family is comes on hard times.
Feel better now?
A little bit.
Basically, he goes treasure hunting. He becomes
he did that a lot. He did that
hunter.
so fucking much.
Yeah. Using
well, he didn't have TV
seer
to watch all day,
seer stones.
so.
Yeah.
Seer stone that he found in a well when he was 8 years old and was a part of every scam he ever fucking pulled.
Yep.
Like look up Joseph Smith's criminal history if you're ever feeling bored. It is a hoot and a fucking half. Like L. Ron Hubbard's good. L. Ron Hubbard definitely looked to this man for inspiration. If L. Ron Hubbard read anyone, it was Joseph Smith, and I'm calling it now.
So yeah, at the end of that period, he meets his wife, and and then they moved to
first wife, I do believe. Didn't he have 3? Yeah. Well,
Them at the same time.
No, actually. If I recall, first one died when he married the second one, and the second one, something came up. Like every time he got married, the others weren't around, and that's why. And then he justified it post. Not the point. Not the point. Technical difficulties.
Yeah, I believe Harris was a local publisher that he had known for a few years and was rather tight with friend-wise.
Yeah.
That being said, Harris's wife thought Smith was a fucking lunatic.
Smith had a surprising amount of high society friends.
Yeah.
Like, for a guy who really, like, just at a glance didn't have anything going on his end, people liked him. People genuinely liked him.
He had charisma. He probably wouldn't have founded a religion if he didn't.
It is
Fair.
kind of it is kind of a requirement. Yeah.
Noted.
Anyways, but yeah, in June of 28, Harris loses a partial copy of the translation.
Yep.
Just loses it. That's my favorite part. Like,
Yeah.
no one tried to hide it. No one was fucking with him. No one was challenging him on this one. He just misplaced shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he was notorious about losing.
New book
bits
of the
work.
Bible, and we're not going to put it in the safe or in a folder. No, we're just going to put that with our miscellaneous desk papers.
There are some reports that insinuate that Harris's wife hid it or took it in order to try to call Smith out, but none of that is for certain proven or anything else.
I have a hard time thinking anyone gave all that much of a shit about what they were doing. Like, that requires someone caring that they're writing the Book of Mormon. I don't think anyone cared
at this
they were
point,
writing the
there were
Book of
very few
Mormon.
people in his circle. He had some people in his circle who knew about it at this point, but not many. Not like actually enough to be a church or anything yet.
Well, like the South Park telling
Well,
of this story includes that version.
Well,
But that's South Park.
that's South Park.
Well,
We're
what,
not.
him and Brigham Young start hanging out, 37, something like that?
I don't know exactly when Brigham Young joined the church. He was.
Well,
he wasn't one of the earlier
I don't know
ones.
if he joined the church at that point, but I want to say 37 is like when they started hanging out.
I don't know exactly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I know he wasn't one of the early members.
Yeah, so this
Anyways.
early version goes missing, disappears,
And
whatever
he says,
happened to
he
it.
says the angel comes to him and takes away the plates for 3 months as punishment, and his ability to be able to translate them. So for 3 months he can't do anything, and then they get brought back.
Well, and I want to say he claimed that the angel was incensed and told him he wasn't allowed to translate from this one anymore. So now they're going to translate from this other plate, and the story's basically the same, but a little different.
That is one of the ad hoc explanations that is not actually what the church supports. The modern church actually has a line that he was never directly translating off the plates in the first fucking place, and that he was using the seer stone along with the specialized gemstone glasses as a go-between. Mm-hmm. So the plates
John
have been
rhinestone glasses.
The plates have been made completely irrelevant by the fact that he's basically freeballing everything at this point. Like, by the modern church's admission, he's kind of just going off of, well, I studied them.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyways, so at this point, he basically starts to show people the actual writings, kind of like 2 waves, known as the 3 witnesses and then the 8 witnesses, and these people will all become like higher up people, like in the church.
I'm not sure.
They're kind of the what's the term? When somebody witnesses like a legal document for an attorney, when you
do you mean a notary?
Notary, yeah. He kind of like notaries of, yep, we've seen it, we saw this, it's totally true.
Combining all of the terror of religion with the banality of bureaucracy, a religious notary.
Bureaucracy!
That is the most horrifying man on the planet. That is a man with the power of the Pope and the dispassion of the IRS. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Just add a bit of lawyer in there, and it's the devil's trifecta.
Yeah. At which point,
they went to chote.
After he shows it to the witnesses, at this point, the angel takes the plates back completely, and they're just gone.
All 200 pounds of that gold.
Apparently.
The church has the dimensions on the book, which I don't have sitting in front of me, but like people have done the math calculating out like what that would be as a solid mass of gold.
Because we know the weight of gold.
Well,
that's a thing we know.
Some people have gone to the far extent of like, well, what would a book with pages literally made of gold leaf come out to be to try and figure out mass differences to like make up this? Because like that's a lot of gold. 200 pounds is really the number for this thing, and that's a big book.
Was it actually supposed to be in like a solid bound book form, or was it always just separate plates?
The big grand temple they have in Utah, I forget the fancy name for it, but you know the one I'm talking about, the super special temple that they have.
Yeah.
They have a mock-up there in. It's at one of the entrances in a lobby area as like a education piece for visiting people.
Right.
And it's a 1-to-1 scale replica of the Book of Mormon and wax dummies of Joseph Smith going over it and explaining it to what's his face? We were just talking about him. The guy who helped him translate it first. I'm forgetting the name.
Harris.
Yes, thank you. I was about to say starts with an H. But yeah, no, and it's good size. It's like a college notebook, but like
it's like
gold.
Textbook size.
And like this tall. Like the page stack is huge.
Yeah, like 3-4 inches thick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's not insubstantial, which is why I can't fucking stop giggling about it. And I've seen enough like portraits of Joseph Smith that like even with artist embellishment, dude was cut, grew up on a farm. You know what they say about them farm-raised boys? Still, world's strongest man running through upstate New York carrying 200 pounds of gold. That shit's not lasting longer than 5 minutes. It's just not.
Anyway,
Good job. Okay.
Go ahead and there we go.
We were discussing.
All right. Anyway, so the plates get taken back,
We went off on
and
that
then
tangent.
1830, he actually publicly publishes the Book of Mormon. And the church is formally founded on April 6th, 1830, the official start date. Originally called just the Church of Christ.
Again, they've gone through a couple of names.
Yeah.
And
Where
they very much wanted to capitalize on, no, this is a new book of the Christian Bible, trying to latch on to what people were comfortable with rather than preaching something totally new.
Yeah.
Oh, and a lot of their foundation is the Christianity that we know today.
It's the same
It's
reason.
Christianity plus.
It's the same reason Christianity absorbed Christmas.
all right,
And a lot of other traditions.
they originally had branches when they're operating out of New York in the towns of Palmyra, Fayette, and Colesville in New York. Early on, they merged with another group led by a guy named Sidney Rigdon, who led a group of Campbellite restorationists.
They made the best soup at their charity soup kitchen. Try the bisque.
There, yeah. Knew that was coming.
And there we go.
Yeah. But
Hey,
And
three
we ain't
idiots in
stopping.
a garage. We told them. We fucking told them when we started this journey.
like a shark to blood. Anyways, yeah, it's a small group, about 100 members. Basically, they meet up with these guys. He talks to Rigdon, and then kind of decide, yeah, no, we agree with you. You guys are right. You guys are right too. And they all join the Church of Christ. And at that point, Rigdon basically becomes Smith's
Second in command
Yeah,
type deal.
yeah.
Smith had a love of hierarchies. It doesn't always show through, like, with the overall teachings of the Book of Mormon, or even, like, with the words that have been immortalized that are directly attributed to him.
But when you
But
look
he
at
was
the
a big hierarchy
when you
guy.
look at the structure of the church itself, you can see it. They're
Well, when
real
you-
fond of strict hierarchies within.
Well, when you get to the high end level of belief in the church and you start talking about things like the Celestial Father, that is straight universal hierarchy. That's just you directing it. Like,
yeah.
I digress, though. I'm sure I'm getting ahead of us at this point.
When aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, we're informed, so we want to run, but we're not there.
With that, when later on in January 1831 they moved to Kirkland, Ohio. Pretty much.
They've still got a good populace down
Yeah.
there, although they were chased out for a brief period.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there are still communities in any of these areas they move to. They get left.
Missouri
plant
especially because they're convinced the Garden of Eden's out there.
Yep.
The New Jerusalem, they call it. Yeah, which is kind of what this is. They start looking for the New Jerusalem, and Ohio is the first place I think it might be.
I believe 32 was the first time Smith got a prophecy saying that Jesus was coming back to America directly. I want to say 32. I may
Or at
be
least
totally
that's-
wrong about that.
I
and
don't know.
It
I don't know
was
that they-
somewhere around there that he came out and claimed to have another vision that
Mo-
declared that
most of the
Jesus
stuff
was
that-
going to be reborn in the new world.
Most of this will pops up in the 1830s. It kind of evolves as they're moving across the country.
That's when they were the most prolific and
Which
It's also
just
when he was
forming.
alive.
Yeah,
so.
Which, just out of
right.
curiosity, fun fact about their stop off in Ohio. Did you know they actually established the largest banking system in Ohio?
I knew they established the banking system.
Yeah, there was actually a like miniature market crash within their banking system that actually got them chased out of the state. Like, they were so important to the state's commerce that when their
they
business,
crashed, the
when their
state
business
crashed.
floundered, oh yeah, people were pissed.
Yep.
Yeah. while they're in
That was
Kirkland,
not alone to Ohio. They did that in a number of places, but that was probably where their crash was the most.
And that wasn't a shot at the Mormons. They were actually very good bankers for the time, according to all accounts. They were actually probably one of the most stable banks in the country at the time.
Yeah. All right. While in Kirkland, that's when he starts to create the high priesthood. Like I said, the hierarchy with him and a couple others up at the top is kind of like, we are the guys who actually receive the visions and the revelations or whatever.
Starts giving people secondary names within the organization based off of biblical angels. Like, I believe his closest informants all had angelic names like Michael, Gabriel, Ezekiel.
This is also the first time the church starts to mess around with the idea of communalism, where they start to basically try to form a commune.
Yeah, that's another trend that continues.
There's parts of them that I like. Their emphasis on serving your community and giving back to the place you live in. That's genuinely admirable and respectable. I wish more religions would include a tenet along those lines.
And that's still one of the biggest tenets of the church today, and why the church does so much for the communities.
It's hyper family and community focused.
Although in this case, it's more than just that. It's an attempt to establish an actual political structural commune.
We're also talking about at this point in time, like literally cutting out a chunk of rugged land in the middle of the woods and building a town. Like we're talking about the literal founding of society at this point as well.
They call it what they refer to as the high order, the idea of the communal ownership of property. It doesn't work. They tried it a couple of different times over the course of the church's history, and it never sticks.
The actual religious body of the church, like the various temples, like their ruling body amongst themselves, that actually seems to function fairly well off of shared resources. They do well on that level to this day.
Yeah, well, I mean, like there's the church side of it, and then there's the actual like political community side of it.
Yeah, 'cause like the
that never lasts.
Yeah,
so the church, though.
The one thing I can say for modern Mormonism, if you're struggling in this world and you're turning to faith as your answer, no judgment, that is the answer for some people. If your issue is you need help in your community, like say you're a single parent or something,
Mormons will help.
They will bend over backwards to make sure you are okay if you are part of their community.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, I benefited from it when I was living in Utah going through some hard times.
Oh, they're not bad people. Their book is funny, which is why everyone looks at them the way they do. They're not bad people. Mitt Romney's not a bad man. He's got strange reading choices.
All right. And then later on that year, the group will split. Someone will stay in Ohio. Others will, including Smith himself, others will start going to Jackson, Missouri, where this is the first place where they say, okay, that's it, there, the New Jerusalem. That's where it's going to be.
Well, they were convinced that the Garden of Eden was somewhere in that area, which is specifically why they chose to settle there. They were positive they were within like 50 miles of where the cradle of humanity
although
had to be.
Eventually they will redefine the idea of, all right, it's not, the New Jerusalem isn't a specific spot here, it's just all of like North America or all of the United States is New Jerusalem.
Oh, no.
This is just the place in it we're going to set up shop.
The idea
it's
evolves,
not a physical location, it's more of an idea.
When they're laying that cornerstone for town hall / the temple, the reason the cornerstone went there is they thought they were real damn close.
Yeah. But anyways, also
a signpost.
And
I'm not throwing shade. That's just what they thought.
Yeah.
Haven't mentioned it so far, and I'm not going to mention it every time they move because it's just such a prolific thing.
They got chased around a lot.
Yeah, pretty much any time they move, it's always at least in part because people in their neighborhoods don't like them, don't want them around for one reason or another.
The
mostly because of
non-Mormon locals tended to get a little pissed at the Mormons.
There were full-on times where governments declared war on Mormons as a collective
it
group.
Gets worse as it goes along. Up to this point, it's mostly been a little harassment.
Chased out with torches and pitchforks.
As much as I don't want to make this analogy, think everything you think about Jews getting chased out of a medieval European village. It's that level shit.
Yeah, a lot of Smith gets arrested like 30 some odd times in the course of his life, and a lot of it.
I think it's more than that. Like, are you just counting like
Mormon
related?
Not arrested. I think those are the number of times he actually gets like charged with something.
Yeah, no, because
the number of arrests is a lot more than that.
Before he was a leader of a religion, he had a long,
hefty arrest record
history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well.
And there were cities and later on states that he was just entirely banned from.
Yeah.
Oh, there was one point he waded over the border of a state across a river because he legally was living in this state at the time, but the governor was just out for his fucking nuts.
Yeah. But, yeah, needless to say, most of the times, once we get into this part where he's leading the church, vast majority of these arrests and all that, a lot of them are things he didn't actually do or were stretches of the truth. They were simply acts of aggression.
There's a tremendous there's a tremendous amount of persecution leveled towards the Mormons.
There was
a lot of it utterly undeserved.
Yeah, there was a big smear campaign against Smith and the Mormons in general.
Yeah.
Throughout all of the 1800s.
Because it wasn't just him. Any number of the others were arrested and or harassed.
Oh, yeah, seen
equally,
just as bad.
And specifically, in 1832, both Smith and Rigdon are tarred and feathered by a mob and left for dead.
I will be honest, as horrible as that is, I always have to laugh when it comes up to they got tarred and feathered.
It's because movies have made it fun and cute for our generation.
Yeah, it ain't.
It's horrible.
It ain't. It is not a pleasant thing to go through or to try to survive.
Tarred with boiling tar.
Skin's coming off when you remove that tar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is not... That is not
There's a reason we don't do it anymore, because it was cruel and unusual.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't that unusual, but it was definitely cruel.
Yeah, I was about to say it's fairly common globally. That was just a good method.
Yeah. But then in July 1833, Mormons and non-Mormons in Missouri will actually start coming to blows. Things get so bad. One Mormon and two non-Mormons are killed. At which point
now, are we talking like fist fight or people grabbing their guns?
Little column A, little column B.
Yeah.
There's a lot of various dust-ups that have very historic titles because they ended up being the impetus for larger events down the road. We're entering a period of time where there's a series of conflicts that just get loosely called the Mormon Wars. Some of these were small things. Some of these were native tribes being like, screw you, this is just more white people coming in where they don't belong. Some of this is the government coming after them for miscellaneous reasons. Like, Missouri literally declares war on Mormons in 33. The entire state.
Yep.
Yeah, no.
They're just repeatedly chased west.
Well, this incident at this point is basically just a kind of spontaneous outbreak of public violence. It's not a coordinated thing. That comes later, like you said.
It builds. It's a domino chain.
Well, nothing is light switch. It's all series.
The key thing here is this incident's big enough that the Mormons will start to actually seriously react. And Smith, who's still back in Ohio, they form a group called Zion's Camp, which is basically a paramilitary group that's sent to Missouri to basically defend the community there.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't this entire group formed of Danonites?
The Danonites will come later.
Okay.
This is
I was mistaken. I'm mistaken. Ignore me.
Yeah, this is
said I couldn't talk about them because we're not talking about that section of.
No, the Danonite. The Danonites are.
We'll talk about. Yeah. We'll talk about the Danonites in a minute.
Okay.
That's like 5 years from now.
I know. But the
get
Danonites get pretty dark in places.
We'll get there.
They're a response to dark times, but
we will get there. Um.
But we
all
were
right.
talking about Missouri and the rising
Yeah.
tensions there,
The
and the
this group will
Zion.
this group won't
group.
last, but it will. Some of the earlier leaders of the church will actually come from its ranks.
Yeah, it was basically a church militia.
There were actually a surprising number of Mormon militias.
Yeah. Well, they were all produced out of responses to, again, whole states declaring war on them.
Right.
No,
Things like that happen. You arm up. That's just a natural
when
reaction.
People talk about like Mormons building forts in the middle of nowhere and shooting anyone who came close in like Old West history. I look at that after all the things I've come to understand about their founding and go,
It makes a bit more sense.
yeah, I fucking would have too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's no
Especially
different.
as everybody's declaring war on them, it's a reasonable response too.
It's genuinely people just trying to live. You can argue with where they want to live, but you don't got a right to shoot at them for it.
All right. 1834, they changed their name to the Church of Latter-day Saints. And then by the end of the following year, 1835, they're up to somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 members. So, sizable group.
They're growing reasonably quickly, too.
Yeah. Also,
it's not the fastest growing religion in history, but it's doing well.
All right.
Well, and a lot of the attraction for people at that time was what they saw as community stability.
Well, even then, too, like the point I made earlier, a lot of the actual doctrine that the Book of Mormon lays out fed into popular concepts of the time, such as manifest destiny, reclaiming these lost lands.
Yep.
All right. Also in 1835, we start to get the actual long-term bureaucratic structure of the church laid out, which has 5 core components to it. You have basically it breaks down into 2 parts. There's the part that governs the actual already established Mormon community, which they refer to as Zion, right? The people who are already in the church, right? And then there's another part that who's in charge of basically the missionaries and the people who exist kind of outside of the formal community.
The people they're bringing into the church but haven't been part of the hierarchy of the church itself.
Yeah, right?
Well, you can also be a member of the Mormon Church without receiving their baptismal rites, which the Mormons absolutely baptize.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're very stringent on it. Has to be a water baptism, too. It's not just ceremony. You got to get dunked.
All right.
Yep.
The core of the highest level of this is what's referred to as the first presidency, which is actually 3 different people. It's the president of the church, which at this point is Joseph Smith.
His vice president.
And then 2 they're referred to as counselors, who are basically like vice presidents.
Vice popes, if you will.
Yeah. The term that came to mind when I thought of this, which is mean because this is not a good analogy, was consiglieres. But that is a very unfair analogy.
I mean, that's at least 30% accurate.
Well,
for informed and confused standards, I think that passes the bar.
anyway.
Our bar is pretty low.
All right. Below
Someone
that,
get the stained shirt. We need to check if it made mustard.
below that is the standing presiding high council, which is basically the representatives of the people who live in like the main in the city in New Jerusalem or whatever, the kind of governing board of the church.
It was the city council.
Yeah,
Not exactly. There were actual like city government separate from the church government, but
And I'm sorry if I'm jumping the shark a little bit here, but I do just want to hammer home how important this is, because the establishment of the presidency of the church, that formal title exists to this day. And that is the formal leader of the church.
Yep.
Like,
yeah.
that it. Before that, Smith was the de facto leader. This formalized it and put it down in writing how this worked.
Yeah,
this was the formalization.
The 5 things I'm talking about here exist today. This is the existing structure of the church.
I just really wanted to hammer home because that's the big dog.
Yeah.
Yeah. While this started during this time, these are things that they do to this day. It is part of the
This is
formalized
what's
structure
indelible.
of the church.
Right. The other part, the other half, is the part that's responsible for the missionary work, the people who are sent out and to start forming new communities and bring in new converts. Before those, there's enough people out there to actually organize locally. What they refer to as stakes are
Yep.
kind of the names of the local communities. And you have, on the top, you have the Quorum of 12 Apostles.
Which I have to admit is a really cool name. The Quorum of 12 Apostles.
That's more or less what Jesus was doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's where it comes from. And basically the idea is the presidency and I believe the counselors and the Quorum of 12 Apostles are the ones who are high up enough that they are the ones who receive divine revelation.
They are
It's-
the top of the church.
It's supposed to be that technically the president is the only one who receives it, but they're the ones who repeat the prophecy, so they're kind of treated as having the same power. At least that's the way it was exercised most commonly.
Yeah.
I may be recontextualizing by, years of later events, but at least that's the way I've always
And
understood
initially,
the
I
structure.
think, at least the way it was laid out, my research was, they all are capable of having some sort of divine communication.
Yeah,
The president ultimately is the one who's in charge of. Nope, this is definitively what
Well,
it
like-
is, how we interpret
Well,
it.
and this goes
Well,
back to
from
the
a-
way that Joseph Smith was raised, where he believed everybody had the potential.
Oh, yeah, no, if you were...
This is just a extrapolation of that,
Yeah, no,
where, if you're on this level of the church, you all have the potential
If
to
you're
have...
devout enough, that's just how God works through
Right.
you. Yeah. Honestly, you can see similar veins of that in literally all of Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Well, the whole idea of prophets is through every religion out there. If you're devoted enough to the divinity to make yourself a prophet and get
I don't
visions
know.
from God.
Shinto doesn't have prophets. They have fortune tellers, but that's not the same thing.
Shintoism is so different from what we're
True,
talking
true,
about.
Yeah,
true.
all right.
Let's not even draw that line.
Okay. Now, below the 12 apostles are what are known as the 70, which is actually a little misleading because it's not actually 70; it's groups of 70.
Okay.
Basically, I think starting out early on before he died, there were like 4 not quite filled groups of 70 that he started out with in the church, and that number has obviously grown. Basically, the idea is they serve kind of the subordinate function under of the same function as the 12 apostles, just kind of locally in each area or
in
whatever.
each region.
Yeah,
They're
are in
like
charge of the
regional
missionary work.
counselors.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
the 12 are the ones that speak for the president, these are the people that are disseminating the official news from that office. Like, think of it like, in this instance, say the 12 are like the White House press secretary, and the 70 are like CNN, MSNBC, Fox occasionally, I guess.
I guess you look at it that way. A little more formal.
It's still a position of authority, but it's not the top dog. It's not the end all be all. It's not that I'm going to listen to you first, last, and always. It's that I should pay attention to what you're saying.
I'd say it's more like if the 12 is Congress, then the 70 is the state legislatures.
Gotta love these freeform metaphors in the middle of a recording.
And then I was going to go with a more inapt analogy would be like political parties. You have the 12, which are the national party, and then the 70 are the state parties.
Yeah.
They do their own thing in their local area,
local group
but they all
regions.
still take orders from the.
I
top.
want to know what the Mormon
top.
Green Party is.
That would be the FDS. No, they're more the Tea Partiers.
No, because the Tea Party was an AstroTurf movement, and the FDS don't have funding. But
I
we're
think
getting
our
off
metaphor has
subject.
crashed and
Oh yeah,
burned.
no,
Yeah,
we
we-
fucked this up royally.
Yeah. All right.
3 dudes in a garage. This is why we started the episode that way.
All right, and then you have the 5th one, which is you have the standing presiding high council, and then you have the high councils of the states, which are basically just
Local
regional
councilors.
regional administrative councils.
City council instead of government or federal government.
And again, I emphasize city administrative government is separate from this.
Yes.
If
very
someone's a
much
mayor or a town council, whatever, that is not this. That is
Yeah.
a separate thing.
this
They
is
can
your-
overlap at certain periods of history, but they are
This
separate
is your
entities.
theological hierarchy. As much as we are metaphoring about
Oh, yeah.
government, this is not any part
we're
of
just-
the political
We're
government
just trying to put
going
in
on.
other parlance to communicate the idea.
We're metaphoring.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Then in 1838, 3 years later, we skipped 3 years. 1838, we moved.
Well,
The
I'm just
main
sort of
church-
do you want me to talk anything about like the Missouri War, like things that
That's
went
coming
on?
up.
Okay.
That's
no,
coming
keep
up.
going then. Keep going.
Yeah. The main group moves to the town of Far West, Ohio. That Missouri community is still there, but the main group, Smith and them, moved to Far West, Ohio. Phone alert. COVID stuff. Anyways, they changed the name again to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which will remain the name all the way up until 2 years ago
2018.
to 2018.
I think
Um,
technically they changed it once in the 70s too, around the same time they started letting black people into the temple. But
I thought that was a one of the fractured.
no, that was rebranding by the main branch of the church when they decided they wanted black people as a part of their organization. So no, there's again, modern church things get a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like speaking about Mormonism, there's two ways to talk about it: the historical context, which is what we are trying to stick to today, and the modern context, because Mormonism has been around just long enough for it to be in a cycle of being reinvented. Christianity has not looked the way it does now forever.
Yeah.
It's gone through many, many phases and many, many
Oh yeah,
changes.
religion evolves as we learn more.
Honestly, we're living through a turning point for the Mormon Church. I think you could honestly go back to the 70s was the last big watershed change for them. But I think we're just in a different point, which is part of why we are focusing so heavily on the early history, because again, this doesn't have a ton to do with modern Mormonism, but you also can't understand
But it's
a
the
modern
roots.
Mormon without knowing their history.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Now this is where we've been kind of dancing around them. This is where the Danites come in. All right, and
The Mormon secret police.
Yep.
Ba 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 ba.
And at times through history, the Danonites have been everything from the secret police to secret enforcers to
The most
Although-
shocking part
bordering
is they
on
found that many people named
culty
Dan.
terrorists. They have a very
well,
wide history.
I'd like to point
Well-
out their history is
Varied
exactly as checkered as Scotland's Black Watch.
Oh yeah.
They were formed with noble intent. It was a idea to have a. I'm trying to think of the right way to put this, because they really weren't a police force. They really weren't a militia, but they were meant to be a protective force for Mormons.
they were created in response to anti-Mormon militias that had formed.
Right,
They
yeah,
were
it's-
They originally started as a defensive
Militia
response
style.
to
Right, but
Yeah.
to,
actual
to-
attacks on
but
the,
to
on the
refer to them as
community.
a police or a military force
That wasn't
is
till later.
disingenuous
That wasn't
to what they are.
That wasn't till much later.
Yeah, no, this
When they
is-
started out as a militia like other militias started.
they're more like a neighborhood watch that agreed at least one of them should have a gun.
Yeah.
That's kind of how they functioned.
At least back in the late 30s.
1830s, just
Yes,
to be clear.
Yes.
1830s.
Well, I mean, back in those days, that's what a militia was. Not
Yeah.
what we think of it today as like, radical right-wing militias who spend all their time out. It was, no, you were just signed up
As-
to when we needed
As
to.
a
You were a guy who
member
carried
of
a
the
gun.
crazy, I will dissolve into the woods folk.
Yeah.
No, I get that, but at the same time, like even back then, a militia, there was still a certain. militant level to it where every man was expected to go in armed. The Dannonites did not have that expectation. You were expected to stand a line shoulder to shoulder with somebody.
You were
if need
expected to
be,
show up, but
they didn't,
weren't quite as armed.
They weren't
militia.
going around being thuggish. They weren't picking fights. It was
At
they
that
were meant
point in
to
time.
form a defensive line. They were not meant to be an offensive force. Later on, they did absolutely get used that way, but again, later on.
Yes, we're talking about early.
Well, and we also mentioned in 1838 the Mormon War.
Yes.
You kind of called it the Missouri War sometimes.
Well, there's a
but
series of them, and the Missouri War speaks to a specific set of conflicts, and rather than trying to talk about everything, I narrowed my focus.
Well.
Basically, entire states or provinces in the West declared war on Mormonism and the Mormon forts that were building and being set up.
More a lot of state sponsoring of angry mobs chasing out Mormon communities from existing population centers.
There were at least 2 instances of actually declaring war, though.
Oh, I believe there were
At
4.
least that.
I believe there
Okay.
were 4, but like an example, like what was going on in Missouri in 1833. Mormons had been moving to Jackson County, Missouri, after fleeing New York for years. It had been a slow trickle, but ever since they had started leaving New York, that was...
They'd come from New York, go through Ohio,
That was
end
one
up
of-
in Missouri.
That was one of their fence post areas. After a while, this influx of Mormons starts to offset the local politics and culture. Because, that always goes so well in America when a new population shows up and it's like, hey, what if we tried doing it this way? 'Cause we're just great about that. And again, as time goes on, like, the Mormons meet resistance, but it doesn't stop them. More Mormons keep coming in, so things just keep getting inflamed.
People might give you the stink eye or flip you off on the sidewalk, but if you got friends coming, they're still coming.
Right, and by 33, there's enough there that you start seeing issues with, like, these remote farms where, like, somebody loses a cow, somebody blames their neighbor, and, oh, guess what religion they are? And 2 family members get shot in a confrontation over livestock that nobody's even sure who the fuck owned. There's other instances where a town says, hey, you don't own the farm that you're currently running, you need to get the fuck out of here, and federal troops roll in later, and there's a shootout.
Yeah.
And more often than not, that did not go well for the soldiers because they tended to be out in the open and, well, if you build a log cabin thick enough, it will stop a musket ball.
Oh, yeah.
Wood is a surprisingly good ballistic material. Like people don't give enough credit. Wood's pretty good.
And especially in those days, if you had a fort, you were the one winning that confrontation. Unless they starved you out and the government wasn't ready to lay siege to the Mormon settlement.
Sometimes they were. It was not common, but occasionally.
Yeah, in most cases, they weren't willing to lay siege. I'll say that. There were a few instances, though.
But you'd end up with these incidents where things get violent because there's a perceived confrontation. Nothing's happened, but somebody goes to confront someone. Somebody ends up dead, and all of a sudden it becomes a justification for much, much larger actions. Like, in terms of official casualties by, like 39, I believe it is, in Missouri, actually attributed to the Missouri War, there's only like 20, 30 deaths. If you actually look at like news reports from the time, that they'll talk about like 20, 30 people at any given one event. Like,
oh yeah, well, the press had a tendency to inflate things.
well, I don't know if that's the press. I don't know if that's like governments
At
and
that
agencies trying to clean their shit up later, years after the fact. I wasn't there, but I can safely say this. The Mormons weren't doing anything but trying to live. They start showing up in the early 30s. By 38, things have become downright hostile. August 6, war is declared by Missouri's government following a brawl at an election in Gatlin. Because politics, baby, they've always been this bad.
Well, and that was one of those things. By that point, Missouri had enough Mormons living there that they did start to affect politics and things like that.
All it took was a handful of incidents and a fist fight on public land, and war were declared on an entire religion.
Yep.
The thing that still, like, boggles my mind about this is, like, a state declaring war in isolation from the federal government, which I understand was like totally a thing.
Days.
No, I understand it's totally a thing, but my broken modern sensibility brain, it's like, fucking really?
Well, not really. That wouldn't be a formal thing, formally declaring war. They might phrase it that way. Basically, that means...
the governor sent state-sponsored militias after Smith in this time period.
But
like
that's not, my point is that's not the same thing as a formal declaration of war. That's the state governor calling out the militia to put down unrest. That's not the same thing as a declaration of war.
They use the word war in their documents.
Colloquially, not
it was
formally.
worded that way, but if you were to look at it as the legal definitions today, you could not say it was a legal definition of war, even though at the time they declared war.
Yeah, they sent armed guys after other people.
Can we at least all agree that the government of Missouri was in the wrong for persecuting these people?
They went.
Yeah, we don't need to get into the
community.
I just need to make sure that, like, I didn't actually lose the thread of the point here. That
No.
These were people being persecuted.
Yeah.
Like,
Alan and I were getting pedantic.
Well, you made a point about you made a big point about the whole really, you declared war? You can do that?
To my modern sensibility brain, that is the most abjectly strange part of this. That is the most foreign to me. The idea of a state body, not a federal body, small government G.
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
It's just something that doesn't happen. Now, in practice, we do that all the time.
I mean, spoiled, born in a time of unprecedented peace.
Our time is just very different from that.
In practice, the governors of the states do this all the time. It's just not directed in that way. Anytime there's a natural disaster and the state governor calls out the militia, that's the exact same action. They're just going in with relief supplies.
Calls out the National Guard, but
that is the militia.
Not in this state.
You know what I mean.
So
that is the
Missouri.
the state militia.
Let's draw us back to Missouri. They sent militias after the Mormons. Did they manage to dislodge the Mormons, or
yes and no?
Did the Mormons hold out?
Yes and no. It's a story of, again, limited conflicts, and what's more interesting is that along the way, there's a couple of times where the Mormons partner up with native tribes because the natives really hate feds. And there are more times where the Mormons are, fighting with the natives because damn Leafites.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's... I've lost the thread of your question.
I just wanted to get us back into the timeline of what was going on, and where we stopped was
I will
Missouri.
say, just because I didn't have another place to put it in here, with the natives, there in the early church, I think when they were in Ohio, I think this is when this started. They actually made missionary attempts to the native tribes, trying to convert
they
the
were
natives.
Exceptionally short-lived, but they absolutely did try.
They tried. They didn't go anywhere really, but they did try.
They'll argue that they never stopped trying, but I don't know. When you send one guy every 3 years, is that trying?
No.
It's more than 0 people.
Yeah, but
just because it is a substandard effort doesn't mean it's not an
effort. The specifically the stuff with in 38, the Mormon War. Like you said, to start with the whole voter interference thing.
It starts in the early 30s as people start moving around and demographics start shifting as a result.
Well, specifically the one event you were talking about, or maybe this was something else you were talking about. The one I have
what
here.
Specifically caused there to be a formal action by the state of Missouri was that in 35 at a election for, I don't think it was governorship of the state. It was a high local office though in Gatlin.
Probably city council type elections.
Yeah, a Mormon politician won the vote. The guy who had the office was like, "Oh, fuck this," and refused to leave. So his supporters started street fights with the Mormons, or the Mormons started street fights with them. That detail is incredibly.
People started fighting in the streets.
Fists got thrown.
Yeah. All right, that's slightly different than the one I have. Listed as the Mormon.
That is specific to Missouri, and this is again.
Well, this is Missouri too.
Okay.
You have a different Missouri instance.
I might know what you're talking about. I just didn't include it.
Mine also has to do with voting, but it happened in 38, not 35.
No, this is 38.
You keep saying 35 over and over again. Every time you, actually, a couple times you might have said 33.
August 6th, 38.
Well, you have
not what you were
said
saying.
35 the
You did
last
not
two
say
times you.
3 guys in the garage.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
just say, this is what I have. All right. 1938. It started when non-Mormons tried to prevent Mormons from voting. Is how I had it as a start.
I think this is all still part of the same event.
Yeah. Well. All right. Both sides raided and burned towns.
God, doesn't this just sound a little
and
too familiar?
It ended it ended when the Danites accidentally thought they were going after a group of like just armed locals or whatever, but it was actually the formal state militia they attacked. At which point the governor was like, "Oh, you just like declared war on us."
Sedition.
Okay, I think this was one of the like things in like this flowchart I found explaining the different inciting events in chronological order. I think this is the one that had the casualty count of like 70 or 80 guys, like the big fucking one. But I was like, I can't pick a moral superior here, and I'm trying to explain persecution, so I'm not gonna muddy this water.
Yeah, well, basically, the way I saw it was once that happened and the state militia got just called out in force, the Mormons were kind of like, oh shit, we're not trying to pick this fight.
That's a reoccurring theme. There's a couple of times just overwhelming force, and they're like, we're sorry.
Yeah.
Can't we just be friends again?
At which point they agree to forfeit all their property and leave the state.
That's more or less how this played out, and at the time they did manage to expel, I believe it was somewhere around 40% of the Mormon population in the state at the time.
Yeah.
They removed a large chunk.
Smith and several other of the leaders get arrested, and like normally they should have been like immediately put on trial for I think sedition or whatever it was and executed.
Yeah, it would have been sedition.
But like a number of delays happen. And then eventually they escape, probably with the help of the guards.
I believe he escaped 5 times. Different incarcerations. I mean, eventually that luck ran out, but
yeah, no. Now, an interesting to note here that the escape was in 39, so it took a while for they were incarcerated for like the better part of a year or something. While they were incarcerated, somebody new kind of comes to the fore who. For the first time, he was the leader of the 12 apostles at the time, and that's Brigham Young. This is where he kind of starts to become more well known in the church. He's kind of like the highest ranking guy left, so he kind of leads.
See, I'm like when you talk early Mormonism, straight up, I'm not mad at Joseph Smith. Yeah. I am mad at Brigham motherfucking Young.
No, but he kind of gets a lot of attention because he kind of leads the exodus out of Missouri up to Illinois, where they resettle in Illinois. About 14,000 settle in Illinois, and some of them also in eastern Iowa. Apparently, some small communities there.
Well, they're nearby.
The main
they got around.
Yeah, the main settlement is in Commerce, Illinois. Is where they set up the new base. They use their like political connections and stuff. To like they get the town is granted like full autonomy and its own like state-recognized militia. Like it's an autonomous political entity within the state. So much that the militia they form, which is referred to as
I believe at this point, not Brigham Young, but Joseph Smith was already in the beginning process of lobbying the United States for trying to establish a Mormon state.
I thought that was in the 40s.
I think that doesn't quite happen yet. That's going to happen just after this.
Okay.
When they move out to, because the territory where they're going to do that hasn't been acquired by the U.S. yet. All that land is still part of Mexico.
Well, okay. In all fairness, when the Mormons got there, it was Mexico, it's because they got chased out the U.S., and then it became the U.S. again.
But that's when they start lobbying for their own state.
Yeah, when the U.S. retook over that area.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Brigham Young later down the line.
The U.S. finally did get that area from Mexico.
But anyways, the militia that they form, this new militia, this is referred to as the Nauvoo Legion.
Yes.
Largest armed group in the state of Illinois at the time. Larger than the state militia or any of the state militias or the police forces.
Yeah.
They were the armed
big
force
group
for
of
the
guys.
state.
Mormons with guns. Deal with it.
Which they also renamed the town Nauvoo, which I forget what language this is actually supposed to. I think it's supposed to be Hebrew for to be beautiful.
Nauvoo.
It's similar to Hebrew. It isn't Hebrew. They fucked up.
I was going to say...
You're right, but they fucked up at the time.
Okay.
All right.
That's what they were going for. And
it was meant to be, but they messed up.
Also,
they were trying to be nice.
I don't think that's a valid excuse anymore.
1840, they introduced a custom. It's called baptism of the dead.
Yup, you can baptize a person after they've died.
Oh, this pisses people off to no end nowadays.
Yeah.
Well, and I can understand why. Dude, in a lot of ways, it kind of falls into that desecrating a corpse.
The Catholic Church has flat out
especially
issued
because you're
formal statements from their formal representative bodies to Mormonism's formal representative bodies. Stop stealing our dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's a phone that connects to Jesus's desk at the heaven office. And it's just like, what the fuck, dude? Half of the office is empty. Where is everyone? They got promoted to double super extra Mormon heaven. God damn it!
Yeah, no, it is a seriously fucked up thing, and a lot of non-Mormons have serious issues with it. But yeah, this is when it started.
Yeah. More. I guess you say more importantly or more notable is the next year, 1841, is when he starts introducing the concept of plural marriage.
Yeah.
So he'd been flirting with it and talking, kind of bringing it up with his.
He had also been fucking around for a while.
Yeah. Well, but mentioning to some of the higher ups of the church.
He was already on his you said this was 40s?
This is 1841.
41. Okay, that would be second wife, I believe. I don't think he's gotten third wife yet.
Yeah, pretty confident. I'm either confusing him with Brigham Young, but I believe the first one died in childbirth after giving birth to 2 children. Second one had 3 kids with, and then there was a third one for a very short length of time before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His death's coming up here real quick.
Yeah.
So, but he, like I said, he'd been talking about the idea had been moving around the inner circle of the church already, but 41 is when
a fair number of them had already been practicing it, although it was divisive amongst those original members. It was not a clean-cut issue.
Yeah.
Well, mostly because polygamy was very much not a thing in the other rest of the world that they were probably raised with before they found Mormonism. Because at this point, we're not... there were kids of Mormonism, but a vast portion of the church were not Mormons for their entire life. They were something else.
None of them were. It has been around long enough.
Yeah, exactly. You had some Mormon babies. The second generation was around, but the church itself were all converts.
Yeah.
So the idea of polygamy was something new and strange and different, and for a lot of them coming from their upbringing, not an idea they were comfortable with.
Yeah, polygamy is a non-existent thing in Western culture at this point.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, so that's 41.
I'm just gonna say first, I wouldn't say polygamy is a non-existing thing. Polyamorous people are a thing.
Well, no, I mean as a
as
common practice in Western society, Western culture.
It is not a common
In this era.
Plural marriage
Correct.
is not a institutionalized thing.
Correct.
I will give you that. I just
especially in this era, I'm talking about. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about in this era.
Yeah, in the 1800s,
okay,
it was
No,
unheard
no,
of.
I'm not talking about modern day stuff.
okay.
That's
no,
a totally different thing.
No. My point there was simply, okay, just 'cause they're not all wearing wedding bands. There are some people that live collectively with like 5 partners, and I'm not trying to yuck on that.
It's just not a legal institution yet. But
that's
in the
just filthy
1800s,
cohabitation.
in the 1800s, it was unheard of. So the idea that he was spreading around polygamy within the church would have been, kind of mind-blowing to a lot of them.
Yeah, no.
At least at first. But like anything else, when you're dealing with a charismatic religious leader, he says something enough times and plant that seed of thought inside of your head.
Though I will say this is a historical note here, in an interesting way, coming at it from the perspective of it's a reformist movement trying to get the church back to the way it originally worked. In the early days of the Christian church, the idea of only having one wife was not a thing.
Oh, yeah, what are you doing? Trying to short sell yourself? How are you going to work them fields with only that many children?
Right.
There's a reason most everybody in Europe is currently related to Charlemagne. And it wasn't that his one wife had a shit ton of kids.
He was thirsty as a tennis player?
Damn right. Yes.
That's the shirt. Powder blue shirt, white lettering,
Pinstripes?
Ooh, that's not bad. Ooh, just on the one side, red. Something that really pops.
All right, now that we've covered that vital issue.
Merch coming eventually.
Now we get to April of 1844.
April of 1844, you say?
Yep.
There was some sort of big conflict going on, right?
Nah. Somebody published a newspaper, though.
Yeah, well, on April 18th, 1844, Smith excommunicates a group of associates who've been disagreeing with him on some stuff.
Mostly the polygamy thing.
Yeah, mostly the polygamy thing, but, you know. Right? On June 7th, the dissenters publish a newspaper.
Yeah.
One issue, one
called
time.
the Nauvoo Expositor.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a great name. The Expositor.
Basically condemning him, again, mostly for the polygamy thing, and calling for reform of the church.
Okay.
Yeah. Realistically, what it was just a public slam document pamphlet thing.
Yeah.
That mostly just called out Smith as a polygamist. Mostly that's what it was. Like anything else in there that was salacious really wasn't, even by the standards of the time. But then it's like, but he's doing it 7 times.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
And it seems kind of like a power play of you got the rest of the Mormon church. You should leave this polygamist and come with us.
Well, no, it wasn't so much that. It was more to sway general public opinion to try and get Smith driven out of the area.
Okay.
It was mildly successful in that to that end. Like, people did actually read the Expositor. It did actually get reasonable circulation.
Well, enough that he basically has the city council declare the paper a public nuisance, and they has guys from the Legion actually destroy the press.
Okay,
physically destroy
say
the
what
thing.
Smith actually had done, because what really happened, Smith gets pissed. Smith uses public influence to get it declared this nuisance. At which point, yes, there is a public mandate for the expositor to stop doing what it's doing. But what Smith does is he organizes a fucking angry mob of Mormons who storm the building that the expositor's printing press was in, and they fucking rip the machine to shit.
That's literally what I just said.
You never once said it was an angry mob.
I said he had units of the Legion, which is true. He got guys from the Legion to go and physically tear up the press.
This was another.
That was a
makes
group
it-
of armed
that
guys.
That makes it sound legitimate, and this totally wasn't.
This was another use of the Dannonites.
Nope, different group.
I could have sworn this was one
The
of
Nauvoo Legion and the Danites are not the exact same group.
No, I know they're different groups. But I could have sworn they were here
to
with,
point out
Smith during this time.
I would like to point out my understanding of the event and the angry mob. There probably were individuals who were Dannonites there, but as far as an official capacity, the Dannonites.
Okay.
No.
Okay, I
Yeah,
got
the Legion is at this point, a state-sanctioned organization.
Right.
Yeah.
But basically, doing this is worse than what the expositor did, because while the expositor was just a public nuisance, that was a nuisance that you got into in your own time, when you weren't busy, when you had a moment to read. This was in the middle of the street in like broad daylight and fucked shit up and, you know, clogged up a small town for a day.
The paper was just people expressing their right to speech. This was
freedom of speech.
That's how the governor felt.
This was a violation of speech and destruction of private property.
That's the point I'm building to.
Yep.
That's exactly how the governor felt on this matter.
Well, actually, that wasn't what caused the governor to act. What caused the governor to act was, after he did this, Smith started getting paranoid that people were going to start to riot and chase him out or whatever. So he
kind of did.
Yeah.
Well, he fully mobilized the Legion and declared martial law.
Yep.
That is the point when the governor says, "Okay,
Time
you
to
can't
act."
do that," and mobilizes the state militia and demands that Smith and the city council surrender themselves for prosecution.
Which, for the record, he does do. They do take him. While he's sitting in the Carthage jailhouse, he's being watched by a local militia simply known as the Greys. They are a well-documented historic group. They exist. If you want to know more about them, Google them. There is some history there. They're watching him for a week. Things are fine. Things are quiet mostly. June 27th, 1844. Cut to 200 armed men in blackface.
Yep.
This can't possibly go bad.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about this incident.
Now, there's some conjecture as to how exactly this mob got to the jailhouse so quickly, because this was a very quick affair by all means. It was over in a hurry.
Very well organized.
But probably not. The
it's a
predominant
mob.
theory is that the Greys just let them in. That they probably didn't want to defend a polygamist, probably didn't really care about any of this, and were probably just there because they were being paid to be there. So, and it's also very much, some Greys definitely fucking joined in what happens from here. As this mob storms the courthouse, a sympathizer to Smith gets him a gun, and they're going to try and get him out of
Defend
there.
him and get him out.
As they've got him armed and they're prepared to get Smith and his brother out of there and save the future of the church, the doors to the courthouse are broken in. They retreat to the second story, trying to just get some distance between them. It's clearly not a great plan, but they're just
It's the only plan they have.
They're trying to not be in direct line of fire.
Yep.
In this scramble, Joseph Smith definitely shot 2 people to death. This is very, very well documented that he got rounds off.
And 2 people died because of it.
In this fight, his brother takes a shot to the dome, gone instantly. He is donezo. Joseph Smith goes to flee at this point, abandoning his weapon, and is going to try and jump out of a second-story window.
Survivable.
And as the legend goes, and there's, varying accounts, but this is the one I like, so it's the one I'm going with, that he got shot in the back through the chest as he was halfway out the window. Falls to the ground, is still alive. They beat the shit out of him and then shoot his corpse like 40 fucking times.
Yep.
Like, most violent, horrific ending ever. And the Mormon church is like, he was a martyr like Jesus. He turned the other cheek. And my thoughts, he shot 2 fuckers and then tried to jump out the window. That's not a martyr. Am I going to say he was executed brutally by a mob? Yeah, and that's fucked up. Is he a martyr? No.
If everyone who was killed by a mob was a martyr, actually.
These words have different meanings for a reason.
Yeah.
Does the term martyr actually require it to be a defenseless killing? That if you attempt to defend yourself, that disqualifies you from being a martyr?
I believe so. I believe that is the
formal definition?
Official sanctioned definition of the term.
I mean, I don't have a dictionary in front of me to, double check, but I am reasonably confident in this. If I'm wrong, then I will fully
technically, we all have definitions.
I want to say it has something about giving yourself willingly to sacrifice.
And if you're running, that don't seem like a willing give.
Or shooting.
Shot in the back. That means he was fleeing.
Well, no. Well, like you said, if you defend yourself, that is not a willing sacrifice.
His brother. Oh, they martyred the shit out of his brother.
Headshot.
Supposedly. I wasn't fucking
Someone in that crowd just gained 50 XP.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. For as divisive as the Mormons are, I find it hilarious that more people don't talk about the fact that, its founder was executed by a mob while awaiting a prison sentence. What?
Trying to escape a church.
No, he was in a courthouse.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. But,
no.
The tale of Mormonism definitely did not end there. That was just the end of its founder. From there, which they mostly moved out of Illinois, didn't they?
Well,
I mean, they definitely left people, but
there's other things more important than geographic location that get changed up at this point, because the big problem is that Joseph Smith's brother was with him, who his name is eluding me, which is why I just kept saying his brother. I'm a fucking idiot.
It is. Hold on, I got it right here.
I want to say it's Samuel.
Hiram.
I'm sure it's wrong.
Hiram.
Yeah. No.
I can understand why that would elude you. It is not a modern common name.
In the line of succession, it was Smith then Hiram.
Yep.
Well, you've just lost your top 2, and pretty much it's a multi-split from here. And there is some fragmentation of the Mormons at this point.
I'm sure there was some sort of power struggle between the 12.
The majority end up following Brigham Young.
Yeah. He formally becomes president of the existing church, and then others break away and
as they disagree
follow different leaders. Yeah.
Brigham Young's an extra special piece of shit.
He's the one that was leading the other religion that brought all of his followers.
No,
that was somebody else.
No,
okay.
Brigham Young came to the party late. I honestly think he started hanging out with Smith in 37. Like, the more we go on this, the more I'm confident of that is the year they met.
So he takes over the head
presidency
position of the church now.
Let me see something. 30. All right, that actually lines up because he takes leadership of the group. Smith is in jail in 38, so, and that's when he kind of comes to prominence. So 37 is not a unreasonable.
Yeah, no, especially because if you're meeting the leader of the church, you're someone of society who had something to offer in the first place.
He might have been somebody who was part of the church prior to that, but that might have been when he came to Smith's attention. like actually,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
became a
for
leader.
some reason, 37 is popping out in my brain in correlation to young, and I can't tell
That
you
might be
what
when
it
he
is,
might be
but
when he became leader of the 12 apostles.
possibly. I'm not. The longer I'm saying it, the more I'm talking myself out of it. So let's just move. To
Let's
the next
move
bullet
on.
point and
All right. After
keep hitting this
all right,
shit.
so after the church fragments, that's in 44. 2 years later, and Brigham Young becomes president of the church. They will leave Illinois in 1846 and travel to what will eventually become the Utah Territory.
But at the time was under control of Mexico, correct?
Yeah, it was part of Mexico.
Yeah.
They had,
Yeah.
the U.S. had more or less successfully chased out the bulk of the Mormons. Obviously, they didn't get them all.
Well,
But
right.
the
They left stragglers everywhere they went.
the beating heart of the movement had left.
And at this point, left the states.
Yeah.
Or at least the states we had at that
So-
time.
So they
Manifest destiny and all.
Yeah, they leave in 1846. Don't actually get there until 1847 because back then that took that
travel
long.
time.
Yeah,
You used to have to walk places.
yeah. They found Salt Lake City.
They did a remarkable job of urban planning, literally from day one. Salt Lake is a beautiful city, and it's remarkably
absolutely.
well laid out. Like for distribution of civil needs, like water distribution, waste management. Salt Lake is a really, really good city.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I lived there a couple of years, and still one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived.
Actually,
If it
The
weren't for the company.
the current Utah state holiday, Pioneer Day,
Yep.
which is July 24th, celebrates when the first Mormons arrived in the Salt Lake Valley.
Yep.
That's honestly something worth celebrating. They did a hell of a job building Salt Lake. They really did. Unironically, I have nothing salty, nothing snarky, no joke here. They did a great fucking job building a community.
Yeah.
Some other
It's what they're best at, community
some other
building.
cities founded by Mormons around the same time in that area, because this whole area also includes basically that they're settling in includes what is now California, Nevada, Colorado, Utah.
Yeah, it was a big
Know,
region.
because I don't think I'm going to
Arizona,
have
New Mexico.
a better chance to really point it out than this.
Yeah.
The way Utah ended up becoming a state after the Mormons were like, hey, give us some land. And they were like, fine, we'll give you this land in the middle of nowhere with nothing on it because we don't fucking need it. Cut to a year later, you find gold. Cut to 2 years later, you find silver over here. All of a sudden, the borders on Utah start fucking shrinking because the other states were like, ah, shit, no, that was always ours. That was always ours. We never meant to give that to you. That's ours. Nevada
Yeah.
exists because fuck the Mormons.
Well, more Nevada and Colorado exist
Kinda.
because gold.
Yeah.
That and admittedly,
The
gold
49
that they did not
rush.
want the Mormons to have.
Yeah, no,
true, but
and we may talk about the 49 gold rush at some point
that may
later
have had
on.
that may have had part to
you
do
know
with
what?
it.
An episode about 49ers would be good. You're on to something there.
All right.
Another time, though.
Yeah, but just for broader historical context, while that may have had something to do with it, the idea of people rushing into an area because gold rush, increasing the population of part of one of these larger, earlier, unorganized territories, and then being starting to cut it up into smaller, organized territories, was a natural part of the process of the settling of the West.
Oh,
Yep.
Since going back to after the Revolution.
Oh no!
So
but,
it's not.
But when you look at the resource map after the fact, it gets really hard to not see that the heaviest Mormon-controlled areas had the least amount of shit, and it really seems like shit that should have been theirs got taken. Nevada is the real blatant obvious line that I like to draw with that one. When you look at the old maps, it's like, yeah, that shouldn't be there.
Well, and that was mostly because of the American government's war on Mormonism as a whole. Because
Yeah,
it definitely, when
Colorado,
we started
yes,
going...
took more of the ultimate land that was there, but the weird-ass notch that Nevada took out of them.
What do you mean, Nevada? the separation of Nevada and Utah is basically a straight line going down the
Yeah.
territory.
It's that top little bit.
No,
It is
that
squared
little
off.
top little notch is Wyoming.
Yeah, you're thinking of Wyoming.
Wyoming is on top of Utah and Colorado. Nevada is to the west, between Utah and California.
Well, Wyoming's kind of.
So this is why we're not a geography podcast.
Yeah.
Despite
Anyways, as the U.S. moved west and started gaining territory there from Mexico and
Well, I
everything
believe-
else, they definitely chopped back what the Mormons had.
even before that, because at this point, it's still part of Mexico. Although I believe, unless I'm drastically wrong, 1845 to 1848 is the years of the Mexican-American War. This is 1846. So the U.S. and Mexico are already technically at war at this point. So they're moving in as the armies are moving in, although admittedly not into this mainly into this area.
I'd also like to just, for a moment, they weren't the only settler group that
Oh,
charged
true,
the
true.
line
Oh
that
no,
they
there
shouldn't have
was
been
a
crossing.
lot of settler groups that were crossing.
I mean,
into
that was
Mexico
The U.S. government
land
flat
during
out
this time.
encouraged it with
Yep.
this idea of if we just establish a population, they can't do shit about it.
Yeah,
That's why
Yep.
Texas is a thing.
yeah, and New Mexico
Can we just
Arizona.
can we just
and-
build
Well,
a
not
wall
that.
around Texas? I think it's safer for the rest of the world. We don't need one across the entire southern border. We just need to isolate Texas.
No, but yeah, no.
So
That's
this takes
another
us
issue.
through the mid 1840s.
So yeah, 1846, 1847, they settle in here. Like I said, other cities they found: San Bernardino, California, Las Vegas, and Mesa, Arizona, are also
Yes.
Original
Fun
Mormon
fact
settlements.
that that most people don't know: Las Vegas was originally a Mormon city.
Well, it was a
Mormon
watering
town.
hole pit stop. But
Yeah,
it wasn't
But-
shit till the mob got there.
But you can trace Las Vegas to the Mormons. Sure didn't turn
They
out how the
founded this-
Mormons wanted it.
they founded the
It
original
wasn't
settlement.
shit until a man in a checkered suit walked in that desert and was like, "Hey, we just dropped a body. You know what I want to do? Gamble."
First, it took the
Pretty sure
army
that was
showing up.
Texas.
But
No,
Cowboys.
straight up. The early mob connections in Vegas, it's because they were dumping bodies out in the desert.
Yeah.
Vegas ended up being a good staging point, so they started pouring money into the local area so their guys could just stay there at the time and not have to worry
and the
about being
type of
watched.
people who get rid of bodies are
And
the
it
kind
grew
of
and
people
grew
who
and grew
like
and
to gamble.
grew. Vegas was built by the mob. It's no longer a mob city, but it once was, and
Yeah.
it's so indelibly
Started by the
cool.
Mormons,
It's
taken
so
over by the
indelibly
mob.
cool.
all right, but anyways, yeah, 1848, Mexican War comes to an end, and the territory that's known as the Mexican Cession becomes part of the United States. It's California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, for the most part.
Yep.
Not exact, but roughly that area. So all of a sudden, they had left the United States. Now all of a sudden, they're back in the United States.
Which I'm pretty certain caused a few issues.
They organize.
The
They
Mormons
managed-
got turned into that dog meme. Let me out so I can come back in.
works for
Well,
them.
and
All right.
about this point is where they start pushing for an independent Mormon state.
Well, it starts to work. At first, it starts working out for him because when the Utah Territory is originally organized in 1850, and Brigham Young is named the territorial governor in 1851. So right off the bat, because at this point nobody's actually else is moving out there yet. It's an unorganized territory. There's
it's
not a lot of
just
people
the
there.
Mormons.
Yeah.
It's just them.
They went into the wilderness, chopped down some shit, and started building.
Right.
Well, that's how you claimed land back in those days.
Yeah. Then, of course, other people start coming in. Talk about the gold rushes, all that, right? 57 to 58, you get what's called the Utah War. I don't know if you had did you have stuff on this one?
Again, this was just sort of lumped into the Mormon Wars, and I narrowed
I know
my
you
focus.
had specifically.
If you want to talk about shit that happened specifically in the 1850s, I've got very specifically the Mount Meadows Massacre.
That is part of this.
Yep.
The Mountain Meadows Mass.
That
Story.
was the single largest body count event I came across, and it is horrifying. And after all of this time of genuinely doing my best to pull my punches against Mormons, I'm still sticking to my guns of everybody's fucking wrong, no one's had a right answer here. But this is where shit gets repugnant, and this is one of the many reasons I do not like Mr. Brigham Young. In 57, a wagon train that started out in Arkansas was cutting through Mormon territory, specifically in Utah. I forget the exact region. But as they're coming through, they come across a Mormon settlement that's more or less just locked down, not letting anyone close. This is like the stereotypical the Mormons shoot at anyone who approaches types.
For background context, with the whole Utah War thing, I forget what it actually starts it, but there's basically an ongoing military standoff between the Mormon community and the U.S. military. Nobody's shooting at each other yet, but guns are pointed.
Everyone is ready to shoot.
If anyone got close enough, there'd be shots fired.
But
that's
nobody's
the key
actively
here.
attacking.
Yeah, no one's pushing lines.
But
they were there, but they were keeping their distance.
This wagon train is going through contested territory. The Mormons were extra riled up because recently a Mormon apostate who was out on mission, a Parley P. Pratt, the alliteration was too good to not include. That man's on fucking point.
Thankfully, his parents were on point.
But
some more P.
But Mr. Pratt was murdered while out on mission, and there's hearsay as to why, and I'm not going to get into that, but they were on edge because they had lost a high-ranking public figure, and when this wagon train comes through, they wipe it out. I believe the total number of survivors was like 20 people. I saw casualty counts from this as high as 170, but the more reliable number I saw was 140.
Okay. That's actually a massive number of deaths.
These are people that would have been disciples of Brigham Young's line of control within the church. This is not some fragmented group. This is the exact Mormons we've been talking about.
Now, we've talked
Hang on.
Okay.
2 years after this event, after things had cooled down a little, members of the U.S. Army were ordered in to deal with any remains from this because, again, this was more or less a massacre in open land, and the Mormons, they're not going to bury dead
just
that aren't
left
theirs.
The corpses rotting in the sun.
Yeah, they did, as a point of fact, recover bodies even 2 years later. This is pretty nasty and fucked up. At the site, these U.S. soldiers erected a monument. Pretty simple. It was just a large stone mason cross that they had erected at the site. Pretty simple monument, but also fairly costly and labor-intensive for the time. But then
Mormon break it down.
Well, 2 years after that, in 1861, when Brigham Young is going through a tour of the area for miscellaneous reasons,
he sees it.
He views it as an eyesore, orders it torn down, and because it's Mormon-controlled territory, it does, and the site is unmarked to this day.
Do they know where it is?
They do, as a point of fact, know where it is. It is documented. Like, if you want to, like, try and figure out, like, down to the exact square foot where
they
somebody died, you're not going to be able to do, but the region...
Like, you can find it.
Like,
they know where it was.
If you wanted to narrow it down to, like, say, a 10-acre plot and say people were getting shot in this area, we can do that.
Okay.
But to try and tell you specifically past that, we're too far past it. The cleanup wasn't a thing where they would have been trying to document forensic evidence. It would have been about trying to lay the dead to rest. So it's
especially
a different attitude than what we have now. Just that information is never going to be clear. The information that is clear, though, is that a lot of Americans died. People tried to offer some type of condolence to those dead, and someone else said, fuck them. Okay. This genuinely hurts me to talk about. Like, I'm not usually one to get terribly invested in things, but you should have a reverence to the dead. You don't have to like them. You don't have to agree with what they died for. But the simple fucking fact of the matter is they cared about something enough to sacrifice themselves. Or, worse than that, that choice was taken from them and they were cut down. And that is tragic. And that carries weight. I don't see a silver lining here, and that's fucking crushing.
Agreed. Now, I'm going to change topic a little bit. You keep talking about Young, and I'm kind of getting a Miskevich feel from him. Is that how he was when he took over the church, or
I don't think that's an apt analogy.
What
Yes and
changed
no.
with him?
Arguably nothing. He was always one of the more extremist adherents. He was a pro-polygamy guy. He was a very anti-outsider guy. He was a very much a fuck the Leafites guy. Why are we trying to reach out to the people who slaughtered our brethren? Like, he's an encapsulation of a lot of the backwards ideas from the founding of the church.
Okay, so he was more just a bigot for the time.
He was definitely a bigot even within the context of the time.
Okay.
I will give you that. I don't know if that
I mean,
really extends
he
to how he
wasn't
ran the church,
internally,
but him personally as a human being, absolutely, even within the context of the time.
Okay.
I think the biggest distinction I would draw in that analogy you're making,
He wasn't
within this-
cruel.
he wasn't going around on a day-to-day basis beating the people who worked for him.
Right.
David Miscavige is a radical cult leader and probably psychotic. I don't believe
It
that
probably
label
wasn't.
could be applied to
David
Brigham Young.
Probably wasn't the best connection there, but
Yeah.
Young definitely flexed muscle. Young definitely had people that he could tell go beat the shit out of that guy, and they would do it. But there's a big difference between being that guy and being, I'm going to put my knee in your chest to remind you who runs this place.
Gotcha.
Like, don't get this twisted. I'm not going to speak nicely of either of these individuals, but they are not on the same plane.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's just every time thus far that you brought him up, it tends to be vilifying him, and it was at what level does he fall in there?
A fair point to make as we're talking about religion and the ethos of religion is good versus evil. If good comes in all sizes, both great and small, that means evil comes in all sizes.
Yeah.
All right.
But moving forward.
Now, basically, after this, this whole standoff gets resolved, and Brigham Young is replaced as governor. And at this point, it's basically a downhill thing for the Mormons. This is kind of like the final, the peak. At this point, the government goes balls to the walls.
This is when they do the heavy cutting back of land.
There are
shit
4
like
specific acts, anti-Mormon acts, I'm going to talk about that they put forward that basically breaks or attempts to break their power in Utah, which will eventually lead to them abandoning
Some of them
polygamy.
were so egregious that Brigham Young threatened to try and separate from the Union.
Yeah, and some of these are, like I said,
Yeah, he tried the Civil War.
When you listen to some of these, though, it's like,
He may have had a reason for
wouldn't you? The first one was in 1862, was the Moral Anti-Bigamy Act, which made...
You gotta love any law that includes the word moral in it. Just like, fuck
pardon me.
you,
No,
I
wrong.
like that.
All right.
I was
might be
more
pronouncing
laughing
that
at
wrong.
the phrase moral bigamy.
All right.
Right?
All right, I want to be clear. I may be pronouncing that wrong. That's actually a proper name, not the word moral.
Oh, okay.
Morrill.
Yeah, that's somebody.
That is
That is
different.
named
That's
Probably
some dude in a
Moriel.
white wig's name. That's just
Yeah,
some
that-
guy.
that's the name
Moriel
of the
or
congressman who
Moriel
put forward
or
the bill.
something
That's
like
that's
that.
probably some
Okay.
French dude.
Okay. No, that is very different. Because,
Yeah.
I heard moral bigamy, and it made me laugh.
Yeah,
Moriel.
I'm
Moriel,
over here,
maybe? I
I'm
don't
over
know.
here just assuming shit, exercising my ignorance. I'm showing I'm American as fuck in the moment.
Hi, we're confused and informed.
No,
All right.
that's a different show.
Oh no, that's right.
That's a
is
different
an
show that
actual-
existed for 3 episodes and went under.
All right, your reaction to this just makes the name of the next one all the funnier.
Woo!
When we get to it.
Wait, was I just... Okay, I was a jackass, but was it because I was premature?
You mean prescient?
Yeah, we'll just gonna get all right. Anyways, the Morrill.
That's the funniest thing you've ever said, but I can't laugh at you for it because it's funny for the wrong reasons.
All right, so the Morrill Anti-Bigamy Act.
Prescient?
I'm done.
So the second one.
No, the Morrill Anti-Bigamy Act.
It's been
It
a
makes-
mission so many years in the making.
It makes bigamy.
Achievement unlocked. I'm sorry. Go, Alan.
Are you
I'll
sure?
shut up.
You done? We done?
Would you like some fire? I mean,
I'll keep that in
I
reserve.
mean, I am gonna need that back. Wait a minute.
You can have this one.
No, I'm good.
I do prefer this one. Damn it.
Yeah, that one's cold though.
Anyways,
It's warm, 'cause I've been-
all right. So this act makes bigamy illegal in all U.S. territories, right, and allows for the confiscation of church property.
Okay.
The government can come in and confiscate church property. It's not heavily enforced. This one, it's on the books.
Part of the reason
there.
for that is that it would have been devastating on the communal level because a lot of people that joined the church were reasonably poor and were in a form of communal housing. So if you seized church land, you would have also generated a huge number of homeless people at
Well,
the same time.
Not just that one part of it, the entire act. On a more broad thing, just because at that point, all the territorial officials are themselves Mormons, so it's
They
the people
didn't
on the
enforce
ground aren't enforcing it on themselves.
Right.
Now that's going to lead to other shit though, because they try to correct
Why
this.
would you enforce something that does damage to you yourself?
All right, which leads us to the 1874 Poland Act, which
I'm sorry. One more time.
the 1874 Poland Act, Poland, Poland Act.
It's about 60, 70 years too early for it to be that funny. But what is it? Is this as
All right.
horrible as I'm imagining?
All right, now, admittedly, this is the same thing as the other one. Poland's the last name of the guy who wrote the bill.
Okay.
Just funny that you made that mistake on the first one when this is the one where
Oh,
it actually is a word that has a different meaning to it. But,
well, like I say, 60, 70 years too early.
all right, now, this one has teeth, though. It gives U.S. district courts exclusive jurisdiction in all cases, civil and criminal. Completely bypasses the local court system. Replaces the territorial marshal and territorial attorneys with a U.S. marshal and a U.S. attorney.
Okay.
So the top cop and the top lawyer are now federally appointed. And alters jury rules so that polygamists can no longer serve on juries.
Yeah, there were any number of legal attacks on polygamy.
Yeah. This is followed up with the 1882 Edmunds Act, which makes bigamous cohabitation illegal. So you don't have to.
Okay, yep.
They don't even have to prove that you're married anymore. Just that you're
Just
living.
if you're living together, it's illegal.
Right.
For the record,
Yep.
there's still a number of cohabitation laws on the books.
Oh, yeah.
Case in point, in Michigan, if you are living with someone of the opposite sex and you are dating or have intentions of like having a common law relationship with them, it's illegal to cohabitate unless you attain a state marriage license. In Michigan, that's on the books.
Yeah.
All right. It also it makes it illegal for polygamists or cohabitants to vote, hold office, or serve on juries in federal territories.
Yep, you're no
Completely
longer
pointed out.
allowed to be part of our government.
Provides for a 5-man commission to oversee all elections, federally appointed. So, again, outside is overseeing elections. And all offices are immediately declared vacated, and the election board issued, then from then on, it only issues certificates to candidates who both denied a belief in plural marriage and did not actually practice it. So you had to prove you weren't
so
practicing
not
it.
only are they no longer allowed to run for office, but anyone currently in office, you're out.
Yep. And anybody after that, in order to be certified as a viable
they
candidate,
have to profess that they
publicly profess that you do not
publicly
believe in
denounce
polygamy,
those.
and obviously prove that you aren't currently practicing
Right.
it. Yeah, obviously. This is followed up by the 1887 Edmunds-Tucker Act, which disincorporates the LDS Church completely, calls for the seizure of all of its assets, requires an anti-polygamy oath for all voters, jurors, and public officials, annulled laws allowing illegitimate children to inherit, which was a thing the Mormons actually were a little more progressive on. They didn't care about they treated illegitimate children better.
They were a part of the community. They carry on after you. Like there was just a greater emphasis on it's bigger than you.
Similarly, women were allowed to vote from 1870 at that point. That was now gotten rid of. Women can't vote anymore.
There's actually a whole bunch of things like from states out west being found in like immediately being like, why wouldn't we treat the women the same?
Wyoming.
Well, in that time, there were a fair
to
amount of women that were
other than this to
very
allow women
powerful players in
vote.
that area because of the honestly the brothel industry.
Do you know who is usually the second most important person in the town after like your sheriff or your mayor? Usually it was the madam at the brothel.
Yep.
And she was respected.
Yeah.
It's not you didn't offer her a nickel for her pussy. You begged. You pleaded, ma'am, I've made an appointment, please.
You paid her well.
All right.
And brothel owners tended to take that money and pay it back into the small towns and society. There are a number of well-known
lots of cities
Western
were built by
towns that were
brothels.
founded and built by brothels.
Dodge City, I believe it's a combination of 3 different cat houses that functionally are responsible for its existence.
And because of that, the whole up to that point rules and everything on voting was you had to own property.
Talking about madams
you had
in the Mormon episode,
right? But you had to own property. You had to be bringing in so much money or industry or owning things to be able to vote. And at that time in those states, those were the brothel madams.
Yeah, it was.
So women kind of had to vote just in order to keep the links of power.
It was one of the few ways a woman could actually maintain independence in that day and age.
And do very well for herself. Sorry, back to Mormons.
Yeah, and then
Mormon. Well, these Mormons may have gone to the whorehouse. Things were different then.
Yeah.
All right. The fifth thing that the Edmunds-Tucker Act did was it got rid of spousal privilege for polygamists.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't get to hide all your assets from taxation upon your death across 80 fucking people.
Well,
right.
more importantly, that means they can force a wife to testify against her husband and vice versa.
Oh, I didn't even consider that.
That's mainly what that is. That's what spousal privilege is under the law.
I'm again taking this into like modern context, immediately dismissing like a healthcare thing because obviously not in that age.
Yeah.
So my next thought is like, okay, well then that's got to have to do with like inheritance rights.
No, this is so they can now force your wives to testify.
That's fucking big.
Yeah, again,
brutal.
You can see why they maybe wanted to be their own country after this.
No, there are reasons why I can understand the reasons behind wanting to secede at that point.
I think the longer any given individual interacts with the United States as a federal body, wishes to be their own independent sovereign nation.
Well, I'll say you can make a strong argument. The shit in these acts is worse than the shit the British did to the people of Boston in the 1870s.
Oh, there's an argument for it.
Yeah, I mean, legit. They got legit grievances here.
There's some things went down in Boston. Do you know what nobody was regulating in Boston? How many people were sleeping on that mattress?
All right. Anyways,
sleeping.
Yeah. So that's up to 1887 now. All this pressure, obviously, is unsustainable, which leads to eventually the 1890 Manifesto. Now, by this point in time, Brigham Young is no longer in charge.
Okay.
The new
is he
president,
dead?
I believe he just passed away.
Okay.
The new president of the church is a man named Wilford Woodruff. The manifesto says that Woodruff had a revelation that the church should stop plural marriages.
Okay. Going back on.
Yeah, we're gonna go back on the polygamy thing.
God said, "Cool it on the wives, guys."
Right. This was also because, in addition to all these laws, Utah was, in addition to the at one point trying to become their own country or whatever, they were also trying to be a state, go from being a territory to a state, and
yeah, because at this point they were just a territory.
Yeah. Now, in order to become a state, once you draw up your constitution, that has to be approved by Congress. They have to sign off on that in order for you to become a state. Well, in their Congress was telling them, you need to make sure in your constitution
that
you don't allow polygamy.
Yeah.
And they weren't doing that, and that was holding that up. So that was the other piece of pressure here that was influencing that. It will eventually be reinforced again by the Second Manifesto in 1904, which is basically the, no, really, we mean it, basically.
No, we were serious the first time.
We're really super
Stop
serial,
it.
you guys.
Yeah. And this, of course, will cause the creation of several splinter groups that reject the manifesto. This is where the FDS will starts and becomes a thing.
That's the time when the FDS splinters off.
Yeah. They're not the only ones, but that's obviously the
they
big
are
one
the
today.
biggest one that has survived to this day.
Yeah.
You know where the current leader of the FDS is?
Where?
We should talk.
Federal prison. He gets out in 2038 if he's still fucking alive.
And we're going to talk about the FDS in a separate episode.
That's all I had to say about it.
How long has he been in?
So much.
I honestly don't know.
26 years, I think.
Okay.
For the current charges of fucking a 12-year-old on camera, I believe.
Okay. All right. Anyways, so they put that out there. They finally relent on the polygamy issue. In 1896, Utah becomes a state. Although, due to the perception that they may not, all right, you've said you're not doing it, but some people are still doing it.
Really?
What did he
Just
say?
keep going. Just keep going. Ignore me. Ignore me. Just keep
going. It's too stupid to bring up.
Okay. Because I think part of it was they kind of grandfathered in people, so it was like no new polygamous marriages, but if you're already married,
if you already have one, we're not gonna make you kick your wives out.
Right. And due to fighting over this, and this is kind of leads to the 1904 manifesto, Utah will not be allowed to seat a full congressional delegation until 1907, 11 years after they become a state. Do they finally actually?
The Senate and the House.
Yeah, they start trying to send people there, but they keep getting rejected because of the polygamy charges.
No, you people have multiple wives. You have to sit outside.
Think about that. They weren't fully recognized until this country started actually looking like America.
Yeah.
Well, because at 1907.
Although in 1890, when they do become a state in 1896, part of that is they do allow women to vote again. So and they become like the second or third, I think, state.
Okay.
To grant women the right to vote.
Just straight up.
It makes sense that they would do it early.
Yeah.
Especially with the way they're so community driven, and the women did a lot for the community.
I grew up in a household with my mother being just an all-powerful terror. I've never understood this concept people have where women are incapable or the weaker sex. Have you ever met an actual woman? They are just as terrifying as a man.
If not more so.
Yeah. Now, like we said, the polygamy thing will technically still around there, but only existing marriages pretty much within the next decade. By the end of that, it's gone. It's a recognized practice. And that's basically the end of the historical Mormon church, and we get into kind of the modern church at that point where they're not, forming militias and fighting people anymore because that...
More soup kitchens.
Right. I don't know if you had any more historical data after that.
I mean, the one thing that I have to poke fun at it because it's ridiculous. It's not my fault. Joseph Smith told them all to wear magic underwear to get into
Well,
super
we'll get
heaven.
that goes
guys.
into the doctrine thing. I meant anything like historical.
I mean, honestly, the biggest takeaway from them, like, historically, and, like, this is, like, the big silver lining to any possible darkness. This is the, regardless of everything else they did, you can look at this and go, you know, I'm glad they were there to do it. Just actually going out and settling Utah. The cities that they built up from the ground.
Definitely.
They did a remarkable job, and it's because it was always built with an emphasis around communal planning and servicing that population.
And they definitely do get credit for building a lot of the West.
Yeah, no,
Credit where credit's due.
Yeah, I'm not going to say
They did a lot of good.
like any religion, because, again, I don't think anybody's got a good answer. But I'm glad they went out there and did what they did.
And the big thing, like my takeaway from this is, we already established, even discounting the modern radical groups and all that. Over the course of its history, the church has done some pretty fucked up shit.
Yeah,
People
literally
died.
Every church has. No one's hands are clean.
But admittedly, they took way more than they gave.
It's very
lot
similar.
longer.
It's very similar to the Jewish faith. It seems like a lot of stories of persecution. They fought back tooth and fucking nail, but it's a lot of persecution.
They were heavily persecuted, and they fought back and they defended themselves. They crossed the line sometimes, and that's not an excuse for when they crossed the line. But you gotta remember to put that into context. They didn't. These were not people who went out of their way to screw around with other people. Mostly, at the beginning, they just wanted to be left alone. And people wouldn't leave them alone. And you poke a bear enough, the bear is going to bite back.
They tried to do exactly what I want to do. They tried to go out to the middle of nowhere and fuck off so that no one would fuck with them anymore.
Yeah.
That's intrinsically American. That is part of the DNA of this nation.
Unfortunately, there were enough other people moving that way that they kind of ran into them again. In a lot of ways.
There's a reason I continually brought up Manifest Destiny. It really does run parallel to this narrative.
Yeah. They may have led the surge that direction, but they certainly weren't the last. And when the rest of us caught up, we were like, oh, you crazy Mormons.
A lot of times, yeah.
Yeah. But I think this has been a great discussion on the history of Mormonism. We're going to have to
I feel
come
pretty
up
good about this.
We are definitely going to have to come back to this topic because we haven't even touched the modern Mormonism, but
in any of its forms.
But
modern Mormons are pretty good from 77 on.
True.
When they dropped the blatantly racist shit as their public doctrine, they really became what they were always trying to sell themselves as. Like I'm not, like I said earlier, Mitt Romney's not a bad man. I disagree with him on a lot. He's not a bad man.
Yeah.
I don't think any of these people are. Except Brigham Young, fuck him.
And you don't see why I got a Miscavige vibe from your comments.
I hate all varietals of filth, both lesser and greater.
I get you. I get you. Anyways, folks, thanks for tuning in. We are Informed and Confused. If you want to head over to Twitter, you can
add InfoConfused on Twitter.com.
There we go. And I think that's it for today. I'm Ben.
I'm Alan.
And I'm Nick. Have a blessed day.
There's a little garage on a small town street. I like to meet my friends there every week, and I know we'll talk about some facts and things, history and science and some crazy shit. Talking it out with Alan, Ben, and Nick, and I know that it's gonna be a weird-ass show. Ooh, insanity abounds. Ooh, the world is spinning round. Now we're gonna break it down.